Boom. Welcome, everybody. I am back finally after a long time of being gone. Hello, everybody. You're listening to the College Sports Superfan. Let's get right into it. So, first, let me address the elephant in the room. I've been gone for some time, doing some reorganizing here, just figuring out a bunch of things, making some life changes. I know I've basically missed the entire college football season. Already, we're getting close to halfway done with the college basketball season, but I am back. I'm ready to try to make some videos again. So let's get right back into it. Today, we're just going to be talking about the first round of the college football playoffs, some of my instant reactions from it, and kind of some ways to fix college football going forward. So let's start off with this matchup between James Madison and Oregon. First, want to say big congratulations to James Madison. This was the last game at the end of the night. We already saw how Tulane got crushed by Ole Miss in the earlier game. And I just wanted to say personally, I thought James Madison should have been the 11th seed. You look at their season, yes, their competition was a little bit weaker than Tulane's. That strength of schedule was really what separated the Green Wave from the Dukes. I truly believe the Dukes were a better team. Plus, I think it would have made for at least a better matchup in that Ole Miss game if they had to play a James Madison team that they've never seen before. I think that would have made some things very, very interesting in Oxford. I think James Madison would have had a better chance at an upset there than Tulane did, who Ole Miss already played earlier in the year. They already know how to beat the Green Wave. They have a history of beating the Green Wave going back to when Tulane was in the SEC. And they already knew what to do against Tulane. So I think that would have been a much more interesting matchup there. Of course, the Oregon Tulane game would have been a bigger blowout than the Oregon James Madison game. But still, we would have maybe at least had three out of the four matchups be really good instead of just two out of the four. But I got to give the James Madison Dukes a lot of credit. They showed up, played really tough in the second half. They were down 34 to 3 at halftime. They could have easily just given up, said, "Yep, we're going to get blown out. This is it. There's no chance of winning." But instead, they really got after Oregon. Oregon clearly took their foot off the gas in the second half, and James Madison was able to score four touchdowns. They had 28 points in the second half. They finished with over 500 yards of total offense, over 300 yards of passing offense. So really great production from the James Madison Dukes. That was very concerning from Oregon, and Oregon, who entered the game as 20.5 point favorites. Actually, James Madison, with that second half surge, only losing 51 to 34, did cover the spread. So, congratulations to James Madison on that, and some concern about Oregon's defense as they'll take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders in the Orange Bowl. More on that in a second. Next up, let's talk about Tulane versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss got off to that fast start, and then they slowed down a little bit, but ultimately ended up controlling the game. That game was never in doubt. The Rebels won, and unfortunately, Lane Kiffin will get $250,000 because Ole Miss wins. So on one hand, I'm pulling for Ole Miss to go all the way, just so that they could win without Kiffin, proving that they could do that. But on the other hand, the unfortunate thing is, if they continue to go all the way, that'll just be more money in bonuses for Lane Kiffin to achieve. So it's kind of a double edged sword on that one. They'll be taking on Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in a rematch there, an all SEC Sugar Bowl in the SEC's one of the SEC's most iconic games. Some other reactions. Let's get to a couple of the better games. Miami taking on Texas A&M. First of all, much better first round this year than last year. Gosh, do I wish that last year they had the seeding correct. And of course, they fixed it this year, but last year we unfortunately had some really, bad first round matchups because the seeding just wasn't properly correct. Teams that were supposed to be way higher, such as Ohio State and Tennessee, ended up playing each other in the first round, and they were ranked way lower because of the fact that you had teams that got buys because of the winning the conference championship. Boise State getting a bye, Arizona State getting a bye. So that really screwed up the seeding for the entire bracket. The entire bracket was ruined because of that. This year, fortunately, they fixed it, and already in the first round, we've seen better games and two things we did not see last year, which was an upset on the road in the first round. It happened twice. Alabama was able to upset Oklahoma on the road, although Alabama was actually a 1.5 point favorite, and the line kind of shifted back and forth between the two of them. But so it was kind of like a coin flip, anyways. And then you had Miami beating Texas A&M, and really the Hurricanes actually controlled that game throughout. You watch the game; they controlled the line of scrimmage, ran the football way better. Texas A&M could not run the football at all. They've had a lot of injuries to their running backs. The only time they could get effective yardage on the ground was from the few Marcel Reed scrambles that worked out pretty well. But the Aggies were kind of fool's gold all season long. They got lucky with their SEC schedule this season, and fortunately, next year there'll be some changes to the SEC schedule. Thank goodness, they're finally playing 9 conference games, something I've been screaming about for years. This will really help the entire SEC and their strength of schedule metrics even more. But this year they only played 8 conference games, and Texas A&M had a outside of their non-conference matchup against Notre Dame, which they won. Outside of that, they had an easy non-conference schedule besides that one game where it was a shootout and Notre Dame lost because they botched an extra point opportunity, so they lost 42 to 41. Then Texas A&M has an easy SEC schedule, but we knew heading into this playoff, we had just seen Texas A&M almost lose to a 3-win South Carolina team. They had to complete the most miraculous SEC comeback ever when they were at home against South Carolina, who's had a disastrous season. So we saw them barely beat South Carolina, really struggle against Texas, who has been up and down all season long. Texas almost losing to Kentucky, almost losing to Mississippi State, losing to Florida. This was a Texas team that was just mediocre throughout the season, besides their defense being elite. And Texas was able to beat Texas A&M. So we knew in these last couple of games, we saw the Aggies and saw how much they struggled, and they go up against a quality Miami team, even at home, and you just see how much they got pushed around. The Hurricanes able to run the ball effectively. Carson Beck, mediocre day, but he didn't make too many terrible mistakes, and Miami was able to escape with a 10-3 victory. And it really could have been worse because the Hurricanes had a chance to have a punt return touchdown that he just barely gets tripped up. They missed some field goals because the wind was just so crazy in that game. So ultimately, the game could have been a lot worse for the Aggies, and luckily for them, they only lose 10-3, and Miami is advancing to the Cotton Bowl to take on Ohio State, which the Ohio State fans have to be salivating after that game because both offenses played so bad, and Ohio State has one of the best defenses in the country. So the Buckeyes definitely going to be big favorites to roll over Miami and get to the next round. But the Hurricanes, they've been waiting over 20 years to get revenge on Ohio State. The two teams played each other in the 2002 2003 national championship game, an iconic national championship game, but a very controversial national championship game that saw the Buckeyes take down the Hurricanes. So Miami's been waiting for their opportunity to get revenge over Ohio State. Now is finally their chance in the Cotton Bowl. So they're definitely going to bring it. Now, for the last game, Alabama taking down Oklahoma. I have never seen a team. By the way, Oklahoma has been to the playoffs so many times, and they've lost every single time. 0-5 in the college football playoff. So they collapsed. This was their best chance to win a playoff game because, as we've seen Oklahoma over the years, back when they played in the Big 12, they would, for the most part, dominate the Big 12, win just enough games, and then would sneak into the 4-team college football playoff as the 4 seed and would be matched up against an all time great number 1 seeded team and would lose. So a part of it is you can't fault Oklahoma too much because they would just get matched up against an all time great team. But at the same time, they've been in the playoffs so many times and have come up short. This was their best chance, up 17 to nothing, and they completely blow it. I mean, they implode so badly. Offense couldn't do anything. Defense couldn't do anything. And it all just completely fell apart for the Sooners. Alabama proves that they belong in the playoff just like Miami. And they will advance to take on Indiana in the Rose Bowl, a place where Alabama's played a lot recently, including just a few years ago against Michigan in that iconic four-team semifinal game. So moving on to those bowl games next, here are just a few of my predictions. Then we'll get into some things that I think could really need to change about this sport. So, first things up, Rose Bowl prediction. I like Indiana a lot. We saw last year the number one seed, though, Oregon, get crushed by Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So after Oregon won the Big Ten championship, now Indiana, an undefeated season, just like Oregon last year, won the Big Ten championship just like Oregon last year, and now will be playing in the Rose Bowl against a team that just came off an impressive win. I think it's going to be extremely close, but I love the balance that Indiana plays with. I love the defense that Indiana has. And it's going to be a close game no matter what, but I think the Hoosiers just have some magic in them. I don't think their story is going to end there. I think they win the Rose Bowl and get to the semifinals. In the next game, got Ohio State taking on Miami in the Cotton Bowl. I think should be an easy win for the Buckeyes. That defense is dominant. The offense should be able to do just enough. They've got a bunch of balance between passing and running the football, and they've also got the confidence knowing that they just won the national championship last year. They also, after coming off such a close, hard-fought loss to Indiana, Ohio State is determined and desperate to get back out onto the field and prove that they are still the Buckeyes that are capable of winning the whole thing. Ultimately, I think Ohio State is just too good against Miami here, and the Buckeyes will win this college football playoff game. And then we have a couple of really exciting matchups. First one I wanted to talk about definitely is the Sugar Bowl, Ole Miss and Georgia. The 6 versus 3. Last time they played each other, it was extremely close, but almost everybody's going to be picking Georgia to win this game. And I'm going to go right along with them. Georgia, huge favorites to win this game because they don't have the play caller in Lane Kiffin. Even though the coaching staff looked fantastic against Tulane, Georgia is just a completely different beast. And overall, I think the Bulldogs will come back and win this game, especially after the way things ended for Georgia. Last year, they played the Sugar Bowl, they played Notre Dame, and that was the game that had to be played the next day because of the tragic shooting in New Orleans. So that game was actually played on January 2nd last year. And Notre Dame, surprisingly to everybody, beat Georgia. They beat Georgia. Georgia did not look very impressive, but you have to keep in mind that last year Georgia's Gunnar Stockton had almost no experience. That was actually technically his first game starting. He played a little bit in the SEC championship game and did just well enough to beat Texas, but he was thrown in there after Carson Beck was injured. So now it's a completely different story. He's had a whole season of starting. The defense is finally coming together, looking like the old Georgia defense, not how they looked at the beginning of the year. The run game is looking a little bit more consistent. Some other receivers are starting to emerge. This is starting to look like the Georgia team that we're so used to seeing over the last few years. I think Georgia handles Ole Miss. Plus, there's all the distractions still going on with Ole Miss. They've got players that are potentially going to be leaving right before this game, going to LSU. They're all thinking about LSU. So you got guys, and they're wondering about their future with the Rebels. So I think there's so many distractions going on with this Ole Miss team that Georgia is going to end up taking advantage of that and winning this game. Excuse me, winning this game against the Ole Miss Rebels. Sorry, I still got a slight cold. Um, the final game, Orange Bowl, Texas Tech, Oregon. This is one that a lot of people will be looking forward to for sure. It's a top five matchup. Very interesting, unique matchup. These two teams actually did play each other believe a few years ago, a home and away series in Oregon and then in Lubbock. So these two teams have a little bit of familiarity with each other from a few years back, but ultimately not a whole lot of history between these two, and not a whole lot of history for either of these two teams in the Orange Bowl specifically. It's a very unique setting for both Texas Tech and Oregon fans. So that'll be very unique for both of those fan bases. A lot of people are going to be picking Oregon to win this game because Oregon's got more talent, arguably, than Texas Tech. Dan Lanning is an impressive coach. He's done a great job building up this team. But I gotta say, I was not impressed with their defense. Maybe it's because they let their foot off the gas against James Madison. And I was not very impressed with their defense. They've got a lot of injuries in their wide receiver group that are now getting healthy, but I think the injuries, the inconsistencies on defense for me, for Oregon, is a concern. Meanwhile, Texas Tech is out to prove something. A lot of people say they don't deserve to be a top four seed. And they want to go in there and prove that they are capable of doing it. They want to prove that the Big 12 is a good conference. Because I will say, this is an interesting fact about the Big 12. The Big 12, in 12 years of the college football playoff, can only claim one college football playoff victory. That was TCU's 2022 semifinal win over Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. All time thrilling game. TCU winning that game and then getting throttled in the national championship game by Georgia. That is the only college football playoff victory that the Big 12 can claim. Oklahoma losing all those times. Texas, by the time they went on their run last year, they were already part of the SEC, and they took down Arizona State in double overtime, who was trying to be the next Big 12 team to win a playoff game. So they've only won one college football playoff game. Keep in mind, that is less playoff victories than the Pac 12, as the Huskies and Oregon, as Washington Huskies and Oregon each have a Pac 12 college football playoff victory. So the Pac 12 still has two playoff victories to the Big 12's one in 12 years. So that's not very good. Texas Tech is going to desperately try to change the narrative about their conference and about their competition. I think they come out here. I think it's really, really close. But this pass rush from Texas Tech is going to make Dante Moore feel uncomfortable. It's not going to be something Oregon was used to against James Madison. I think Texas Tech gets back there. Oregon doesn't have as much success on offense. Baron Morton lights it up in the secondary. And Texas Tech survives in a thrilling game in the Orange Bowl to get to the college football playoff semifinal, where I believe they will be playing the top seeded Indiana Hoosiers. So yeah, I picked all favorites in that one. Now, lastly, just want to talk some brief bits about what I think needs to change for college football. So, some big things that need to change is we have to figure out the NIL situation. Players getting paid a lot of money. Everybody always said, it came to the point where two-thirds of the public believed that players should be paid, should be compensated in college, especially when you see how much money these universities are making off of college students and how much money these coaches were making. I mean, in a lot of states in the South, the head football coach is one of the top paid people in the state. So it was getting to be outlandish with how much money they were making and the fact that college students were still getting paid zero. So I fully support college students being paid. I fully supported that as part of the two-thirds of people that did. However, I don't think people wanted college students to be paid up to $10 million and multimillionaires before they've even done anything. And multimillionaires as a young kid with all these influences around their life, I mean, that's just a lot of money to handle for someone who's so young, with so little life experience. So that's definitely not what people wanted. We've already heard about horror stories of young guys going into the NFL, making millions of dollars, and then seeing where that leads. Bad influencers coming into their lives and blowing all their money. It's just not good. So I think it's even worse when you give it to 18, 19, 20 year olds. So that needs to be fixed. We need to find some kind of fair regulation on that. A salary cap is absolutely needed. The NCAA needs to step up and do something about that. Also, we need to get back to some kind of regionality in college football. It makes no sense for Stanford and Cal to be playing in the ACC. I don't know who likes that. I really don't think anybody likes that. It doesn't even make any sense for Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC to play in the Big Ten. It honestly doesn't even make any sense for Texas A&M, Missouri, Texas, and Oklahoma to play in the SEC. It just doesn't make any sense. So we have to find some way to get back to some kind of regionality. My hope was that these mega conferences, SEC and Big Ten, would continue to expand, but then break their conferences down into smaller individual divisions so that you at least play teams that are close to you geographically more often. So you can kind of have like a Big Ten Pacific division and just have those teams all like all four of those teams in the same division and have another division kind of in the middle and then another division kind of further out east with like Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, all kind of out in the same division. So I'm hoping that they're going to come up with some kind of ultimate solution like that, that they continue to expand because for fans, it's just a lot of money to be traveling, spending money on hotels, and you're asking a lot out of fans for a college football game. And I worry the more money you're going to be demanding from fans, the more they're going to want to walk away from you. We're already seeing universities demand, give us more money for NIL, give us more money for NIL. And we say, how much money does this university have? Doesn't this university make millions and millions and millions of dollars by overcharging for their tuition in the first place? I mean, college tuition has is gotten extremely expensive, well past the rate of inflation, well past. So ultimately, people are getting frustrated. They're asking, why are you demanding that us pay you more money when you already make a significant amount of money? I think that's just going to drive fans further away the more you take away from the magic of what made college football special in the first place. And lastly, I want to address the college football playoff. I think there needs to be clear parameters set at the beginning of the season what the committee is looking for. The committee can't just decide late in the year, well, we've decided that this is the most important thing to us. We've decided that head to head is now the more important than points per game. Okay. Well, and we've decided that strength of schedule is more important, even though we didn't consider it important at the beginning of the year, but now we consider it to be important. You just can't have any of that. And then also, what is up with this thing called eye test? That's just a made up nonsense. Eye test doesn't even mean anything. Like that's just a way for them to give themselves more. Yeah, well, this team based on the eye test is better. What does that even mean? Nobody knows what that means. So ultimately, I think the committee has to come out at the beginning of the year and they have to say, these are the parameters that we're setting. I also think the playoffs should be at 16 teams. Every single team plays in the first round home games. And ultimately, I also think that we need to sadly do away with bowl games. It's just a part of the past. It's just something that needs to be left in the past, unfortunately. I'm someone who loves bowl games. I didn't want it to go, but at this point, it's hindering everything at this point. It's ruining the college football schedule because the weird schedule that we've got when it comes to the transfer portal and everything being so screwed up is because college football and the NCAA is desperately trying to protect these bowl games that almost nobody goes to and almost nobody watches. I mean, take a look at the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, which is going to be happening this Monday between Utah State and Washington State, a couple of 6-6 teams, and just look at how many people show up. The stands are probably going to be almost completely empty. So at this point, bowl games have lost their meaning. Players have been opting out for years. Now we're seeing whole teams, Notre Dame skipping out of bowl games, Kansas State, Iowa State, UCF, Baylor, all opting out of bowl games. I mean, to me, that is the final death nail. If whole teams are opting out of bowl games, they've completely lost their meaning. Nobody cares about them anymore. And it's sad because some of them, like the Rose Bowl, are such an iconic, special spectacle, but the game has changed. And I think the more fair thing to do would be to have home playoff games throughout the whole playoffs until you get to the national championship game, which can continue to be a unique setting in a big city like Miami or Dallas or LA or somewhere else. But until then, it should be home playoff games the rest of the way. That's how the NFL works. That's how high school football works. So why is college football in the middle refusing to do what these other two levels above and below them are doing? And it's sad, and there's going to be a lot of pushback on this, but I do just think it's time for bowl games to end. I think we're now in that era. It's time to accept that things have changed and move on and have the expanded playoff, the 16 teams that make the playoff. Everybody else doesn't play unless a couple of teams that just barely missed the playoff decide that they want to do some kind of postseason scrimmage with another team in a neutral site. Then I think they should be allowed to do so. So let the teams decide, do you want to keep going with this? Like when Vanderbilt wanted to play an extra game against somebody, they should have been allowed to do so. But ultimately, once you get the playoff bracket set, it's set. I think it should be 16 teams. Everybody should play in the first round. Nobody should get any buys. Home field the whole way until you get to the national championship game. That to me is the most fair. And then set clear parameters from the beginning. What are you going to evaluate most so that coaches and fans can keep up and say, okay, well, they care most about, points per game. Therefore, our team or scoring differential. Therefore, our team should run up the score against somebody. And not just guess that, well, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. Are we going to be a-holes for doing that? Or is this something we should do? And then everybody knows that we should do it, so we're going to do it. So there needs to be clear parameters set from the beginning. And also, they need to do away with the weekly college football playoff show. It's so awkward and weird. And it just doesn't do anybody any good. They're trying to add drama, but by adding drama, you're just frustrating everybody. So ESPN is, of course, going to be very resistant to that. So I highly doubt this is something that is going to go away. This is just a Christmas wish list, but it's not going to go away. Uh, ESPN makes too much money from that. Ultimately, those are the things I think should change about college football, and I think this is how the rest of the college football playoff is going to go. I know this was kind of a long-winded, This ended up being a longer video than I wanted it to be. Just kind of be more talk and getting back into the swing of things for this YouTube channel. But yeah, I'll have some more videos coming out soon. They'll probably all be a lot shorter than this one, and I'm excited to see how some of these later college football playoff round games go. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening and supporting the college sports superfan.